Hey everyone, so I'm going to be covering probably my last video for Ultra League for this season, and for those of you who do not like to go against Giratina, this is the video for you. Me personally, I was kind of getting sick of seeing Giratinas all the time in Ultra League, but with this team, you'll actually kind of want to see a Giratina. And it's a pretty simple strategy. Essentially, I'm bringing 3 Giratina counters, but the thing with this team is it also covers a lot of the other meta pretty well, and so it's flexible even when people don't bring Giratinas. For my team, I'm running Togekiss, Zangoose, and Alolan Muck. And for those that haven't seen my other 2 Zangoose videos, I'll link those down below. And also note that you have to have 100% Zangoose or close to it to really maximize in Ultra League. For Togekiss and Alolan Muck, IVs are not nearly as important as long as they're maxed out at 2500 or close to it. So going into the matches, I'm going to go against a pretty meta team right now. It's going to be Swampert, Registeel with Giratina. And Swampert is pretty solid against this team, so that's why I usually stay in with Togekiss against it. It doesn't have a great matchup with Alolan Muck, and then for Zangoose, it's definitely a little bait dependent. You definitely need shields up for that. So my opponent does switch to Registeel right here. So in this situation, I'm going to likely bait with a Night Slash and see what my opponent does. Close combat is very deadly if it goes unshielded, so a lot of people do end up shielding that. And then at this point, I'm probably going to go close combat because unless my opponent decides to invest 2 shields, in this situation, it's going to land pretty hard. And at this point, I'm going to shield because even though my defense is lowered, I'm going to Night Slash down my opponent, and then now I'm going to bring in use Night Slash. And I expected it to be a Swampert, so that was fine. And then now I'm going to bring in my Togekiss, and then Togekiss can tank 2 Hydro Cannons at full health, and Mud Shots aren't doing much, so that's why it's going to be a pretty solid situation. And then my opponent goes in with the Registeel, I'm assuming trying to absorb or charge move damage. At this point, you'll see that there's not much that Giratina can do. Alolan Muck pretty much just needs 2 Dark Pulses to take out Giratina, and it's not going to resist the Dragon Claw damage, but it is going to resist the Shadow Claw damage. And something I also noted is that a lot of Giratinas tend to run Dragon Breath these days for some reason. And so Dragon Breath is definitely trickier for Alolan Muck and Zangoose to handle, but it is even better against Togekiss. And as you can see, this is actually a good example one. So in this matchup, I'm going against a Giratina lead, always a favorable option, but honestly, Giratina against any of my line is going to be a bad situation. Essentially, I'm ensuring that I always have a solid matchup some way or form in the back. And so that's why I don't mind that my opponent brought in Clefable. And like I said, my team is not the best against Charmers and Swamperts, and so that's why I decided to stay in there. And then at this point, I'm going to shield the Hydro. Oh, it was actually Earthquake, so it actually worked out that I shielded. I was thinking you don't necessarily have to shield the first Hydro Cannon, but it was actually a good move that I did. And then now I'm going to bring in my Night Slash again. I'm not actually sure why my opponent switched into Giratina in this situation, because technically Zangoose is better against Giratina than Swampert, but that being said, I'm going to bring in my Alolan Muck, and the reason behind this is because it's going to be able to tank the Dragon Breaths better, and then I have enough energy in my Zangoose already, so I have that in mind, and then in case this Alolan Muck is taken out by Swampert, I'll be able to drop a charge move on this Swampert. And so, yeah, Swampert is going to charge up to a Hydro Cannon, take me out right there, but Zangoose's attack is so high, it's going to win the charge move priority in pretty much every single situation, so is able to land the close combat and take out that win. And so again, team's not the best against Charmers, but if I go into a Charm lead, that's not a bad situation. The main reason is because if they have a Registeel in the back, that's not great, and so I want to kind of clear out my Togekiss and make sure they don't have that matchup, and then also I don't have to worry about the Charm in the back. Alolan Muck does okay against Charmers, but you have to land the Sludge Wave, and with shields up, that's a lot trickier to do. And then obviously Zangoose is not very good against Charmers. And so right here, pretty great situation, because I'm thinking I have a good matchup with Alolan Muck and Zangoose. The reason why I switch out is because Zangoose doesn't resist psychic damage, so fast move damage is going to do a decent amount against Zangoose, and yeah, and then charge moves obviously will do quite a bit. So my opponent switches into Giratina. They really have no other option at this point. Like I said, pretty much if they bring Giratina, it's very hard to lose your matchups. I've lost a few times, and that was mostly due to misplays. But for the most part, if they bring Giratina, you pretty much have an easy path to victory. Unless they have, I don't know, some perfect situation lined up in general. But for the most part, it's going to be pretty easy to beat. And so my opponent does have drop a charge move at this point because they're so low, and then I'll just be able to finish it off with Snarls from Alolan Muck. Yeah, so what do I do in Registeel leads? Because that happens quite a bit, and Registeel leads are definitely trickier. So what I always do is switch to Alolan Muck. And the reason behind this is because Zangoose does really well with close combat. And the other reason is because you can tank moves from Registeel, and you don't want to give away your biggest Registeel counter by switching to it. Something else to note is that if your opponent stays in with Registeel, that's actually good news. What that means is that they're weak to Dark in the back. Likely, they'll probably have a Giratina and then something else, probably a Psychic. And so at that point, that's why I decided to swap out my Alolan Muck. And the reason is so the switch timer's off, and then this is because Alolan Muck probably has a better matchup against most of the things in the back than Zangoose does. Zangoose is okay, but like I said, it doesn't resist confusion damage or psychic damage in general. So that's why I decided to save Alolan Muck, because having to rely on Zangoose with 0 shields is much riskier than using Alolan Muck in that situation. And at this point, I switch into Alolan Muck. And I don't know if my opponent misplayed right there, because I feel like they should have had enough energy. They quickly switched to Giratina Origin, right? So like I said, this team is pretty much really good against all forms of Giratina. And then I'm going to bring in my Togekiss because at that point, I know that that's the best utilization for it. I don't have to worry about any charge moves on Zangoose. And then I'm going to absorb all the charge move damage from the Cresselia. And even if Togekiss was fainted out, I was able to finish it. I would be able to finish it with Zangoose. So going into another Registeel lead, right? So a very tricky situation is when you have Registeel and they have a Swampert as well, because Swampert counters Alolan Muck really well. So I thought this was another situation where they might have not had a counter to Alolan Muck, but they decided to absorb the energy first, and so now they have Swampert in here. Definitely tricky because Swampert does really well against Alolan Muck, and then now I had to bring in my Togekiss, and it does quite a bit of damage to Togekiss, but I'm not going to shield. I want Zangoose to have a decent shield advantage, and honestly, if it's a Charmer in the back, then I'm kind of in a bad place, but if not, I'm in a pretty solid spot. So going to have to shield pretty much most things that Registeel throws out. Not that I can't take a Flash Cannon, but I kind of want the Zangoose to have full health, just because I know that it's going to have a terrible matchup with Togekiss versus Registeel. And so it is a Giratina, and all they can really do is either tank Night Slashes or shield Night Slashes. And it's not worth for me to shield at this point. And because so many Giratinas are now running Shadow Sneak instead of Ancient Power, so right here I go for a quick switch because I want to absorb that charge move damage. And then now they have 2 shields, so I'm going to have to bait out both shields, but at the same time, they're so low on health that Night Slash is going to be able to do quite a bit of damage, and I had so much energy banked up from when I was going against the Giratina. And then, so now, my opponent's much lower, and I should be able to take it out with just 1 Night Slash, and I was able to get to it pretty quickly with just charging energy from Shadow Claws. Helps really a lot. So, yeah, so going into a Melmetal lead, what do I do there? And so this is kind of tricky just because it does have superpower, so it does decent. And then my opponent even switches straight away to a Clefable. And so that's not a great situation for me. You do want to drop close combats. They're both resisted, but it's just a way more energy efficient move. And then it also reduces my defense, so I'm able to kind of get farmed down. Not really get farmed down very easily. And so I quickly switch in to Alolan Muck, and I'm going to tank the Rock Slides. It's going to do a decent amount of damage, but it's not a ton, I guess, and it's way better than the Togekiss matchup. And then now I'm going to go in and try. I was able to bait out Shield, was just lucky, and then now I'm going to hit it with a Sludge Wave. At this point, I'm likely going to shield just because even his friend's playing, it's going to do quite a bit of damage. And then I'm going to go for, I was going to try to farm it down. And you can see I was trying to switch to Togekiss as well to kind of absorb some damage. So now I'm kind of in a tricky situation just because my opponent still has a shield up and I still have Togekiss. So what I need to do is absorb a Rock Slide from this Melmetal. And Melmetal is just not nearly as tanky as Registeel. As you can see, the Charm is still doing quite a bit of damage, so they're forced to pretty much drop another Rock Slide. And then now this Melmetal is on neutral energy, and I'm able to hit it with a Dark Pulse. So definitely slightly trickier. And as you can see, that matchup, there wasn't Giratina either. So this team does still decent against non-Giratina teams, even when I lost to a lead pretty hard with Togekiss versus Melmetal. So again, going into this situation, I'm going in with Alolan Muck as safe switch, and there's not really a need to shield Frenzy Plants right away because they are resistant, and so is Sludge Bomb, but they definitely start adding up. So now I'm going to try to drop a Sludge Wave on it, hoping that they don't double shield, and my opponent doesn't, which is great. And then now I'm at a 2 shield advantage, but I'm going to farm down with Snarl because I'm curious why my opponent didn't switch. But yeah, so now they have Poliwrath, which does really well against the Alolan Muck, but now that I have switch advantage, I'm in a definitely better spot. But you know, these Ice Punches are definitely going to start hurting, but I don't want that. I don't want the Poliwrath matched up with Zangoose. And so I was able to get a slight boost there, but it wasn't really enough. And then here, I decided to shield, thinking it might be a bait, and it was a bait. And so I'm going to try to Shadow Claw this down because my opponent still has a shield, so it's kind of pointless. And I actually was able to tank a Overheat with Zangoose. So Zangoose is definitely glassy, but the fact that I was even able to tank a Overheat is definitely kind of impressive. Okay, so this is a situation where there's pretty much no way for me to win. And so what I'm doing right here is, Togekiss even better Charmer against Zangoose because it's going to double resist the close combat because it's both flying and fairy versus Clefable only single resistant. And they hit me with a flamethrower too, which does a lot of damage these days compared to, I guess, Ancient Power at least. And so my opponent does have the shield. Good call by them because that's going to do quite a bit of damage even with the reduced damage from Ancient Power. And then my opponent has a Clefable. And so, like I said before, Clefable is... Charmers in general are still going to do quite a bit of damage to Alolan Muck because it's taking neutral damage because it's part dark typing and poison. But luckily I was able to bait out a shield. And then right here, I'm going to try to snarl down this Clefable and try to get to a Sludge Wave. And as you see, I was hitting at it, but Charizard got there in time because before me because it has a higher attack stat. And I don't know if the Sludge Wave would have been enough. I know that Dark Pulse wouldn't have been, which is why I was going for the Sludge Wave. So again, Charizard, not a great situation for my team, to be honest. Alolan Muck probably has the best matchup against it, but that's why I safe switch Zangoose because, yeah. Okay, so Shiftry, going to hit really hard. And my opponent's going to have to probably shield my attacks because one close combat is enough to take out Shiftry in one shot. I was able to bait it out with a nice slash, and then now I'm going in with close combat. So like I mentioned in my previous videos, Zangoose is a very bait-dependent Pokemon in a lot of ways, but because of how fast it charges energy, it can bait very effectively in my mind. And then so now I'm going to go in with Alolan Muck, and I'm going to have to, tank this Blast Burn. It's going to do quite a bit of damage. And then my opponent has Charizard. Gyarados. Gyarados is actually a really great Pokemon for Togekiss to be matched up in, especially if it has shields up. 100 Pump is going to hurt, obviously, so that's not a great situation. But it's going to resist the Dragon Breath damage, which is really nice, as well as Crunch. And then I tried to undercharge a little bit there, but I don't think it was still too much to kind of KO. But able to get to Dark Pulse. Okay, so actually I forgot to cover my Armor Mewtwo footage, so I'm doing a second take on this. And so Armor Mewtwo is actually a really solid pick, and pretty much you can hurt it with both Zangoose and Alolan Muck, but the main reason why I switched in Zangoose is because I want to force him out and use Muck in the back end because it has a much better matchup because it actually resists the confusion damage. So something to note is that a lot of Armor Mewtwo's when I switch in Zangoose will sit there and try to tank a Night Slash first before switching. And so usually I hold off on that because that way I have a lot of energy built up for the next matchup. I only really drop the Night Slash if they start dropping their own charge moves, right? But most cases they'll switch out eventually. So this puts me in a pretty good spot. It doesn't really matter that this Armor Mewtwo has a lot of energy. What I really want to do in the last one is win switch priority, which is how I was able to take out that Venusaur, and it's why I expended both shields. So right here, even though these Dynamic Punch is going to do quite a bit, pretty much one Dark Pulse would, additional Dark Pulse would take out the Mewtwo. And then, like I said, if they're running Giratina, it's pretty tough to overcome this line just because they're pretty much going at a deficit every single time they go against any of these Pokemon. And then now I'm going to be able to just farm down this Giratina. And especially since most aren't running Ancient Power, or even if they are, it's reduced damage. It doesn't really threaten Togekiss at all, especially in Zero Shields. And there, I could just charm it down. Quick and simple, that's pretty much the team. You pretty much can win almost any Giratina team because you have triple Giratina counters. If you're struggling with Giratina Ultra League this season, I know there's only a few days left, but feel free to give this team a try. Like I said, Zangoose is definitely an investment and maybe not the easiest Pokemon to acquire, but it really is hard to replace. So if you can't get one this season, maybe work on getting one for next season. If you like this video, feel free to give it a like and share and subscribe for future content, and I'll see you all next time.